I mentioned last week we were finishing up about Taanis Esther. I mentioned the various.
Last week you didn't have.
I mean, 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
last year. So, but I forgot to talk about the Rambam. So I'm going to talk about the Rambam, and then I'll give you an encapsulation of all the various opinions. Now, I mentioned before some of the problems with Taanis Esther are we have what's known as Megillus Taanis. Megillus Taanis is actually the first Torah Shabbal Peh that was written down. All right, it's actually the first thing that was written because the Gemara talks about what's written in Megillus Taanis. It was written during the time of the Tanoim, so it was already during Vayesheni. It was, and that's why it's called Megillus Taanis. It was written in the Megillah. It was written down, and the halach is that whatever in Megillus Taanis today, with the exception of Hanukkah and Purim, are batel. Now, Megillus Taanis basically consists of 2 parts. So one part of Megillus Taanis is a list of all the holidays that existed during Vayesheni. Now, during Vayesheni, as you know, about Hanukkah and Purim, there were many fights with a lot of the governments that were, clashing with with Eretz Yisrael, with the Jews. And every time there would be a victory on behalf of the Jews, they would usually make a holiday. They make a chag, especially those people like Niknor, other officials, Roman officials that wanted to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, when they were thwarted and they were unable and defeated, so they made a holiday. But after the final destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, there's no reason to have a holiday that Niknor didn't destroy it, because ultimately it got destroyed. So the halacha is that everything mentioned in Megillus Taanis is batel. Now, the other part of Megillus Taanis are not just the holidays, but our list of fast days that were kept during Vayesheni too. And the interesting thing is, Taanis Esther is not mentioned in there. Tisha B'Av is mentioned, other days, Shivasa B'Tamas, etc. They are mentioned, even though we're going to see, according to the Rambam, that could be problematic also. But, according to Rashi, but Tisha B'Av and the other the other fast days, major ones are mentioned. Taanis Esther is not mentioned. Now, if it existed during Vayesheni, why wasn't it mentioned in Megillus Taanis? Now, the other rule that you have to know is that a day before a holiday and a day after, they didn't allow fasting and eulogies, etc. However, once Megillus Taanis is batel, and the fast days are batel, and the holidays are batel, so then the days before and after, it seems like they're batel also. As a result, even though Purim and Hanukkah aren't batel, but the idea that you cannot fast before or after, that's no worse than the other fast days that are batel, and therefore we're allowed to fast on Yud Gimel Adar. Yud Gimel Adar during the time of Vayesheni was actually a holiday. It was where Niknor was defeated, so they didn't, obviously, it seems like they wouldn't have fasted. According to some, they may have fasted, they just didn't do eulogies. But there are problems with the fasting on the day before a holiday than a day after. So then the question is, so what about before a Yontif, or before, let's say, Pesach, before Shabbos, etc., with fast days that fell out on Friday, that weren't Nidcha, they kept on Friday. So the Gemara answers that the ones that are Dioraisa, like Shabbos and Yontif, they don't need Chizuk. We're not worried people will break them and fast on the holiday if they fast the day before. But rabbinic holidays, they need chizuk l'divreihem, and therefore they are not allowed to fast the day before or the day afterwards. So again, that doesn't apply anymore to Purim, because either once Megillus Taanis is batel, so that's batel. It may not apply to Purim because, in other words, Purim itself is divrei Kabbalah, according to, it's in the Tanakh. And divrei Kabbalah is kedivrei Torah, so just like you could fast on a day before Shabbos or a Yontif, you could fast on the day before Purim as well. That's the other possibility. The third possibility is it could be that they actually fasted already from the time of Mordechai and Esther. So therefore, the fast, we can't make it worse than it was then. The people had already been makabel to fast. So these are some of the problems and some of the answers of why we could fast on Tainus Esther, on Yud Gimel Adar, which is a day before Purim. Now, that withstanding, the question is, though, why isn't it mentioned in Megillus Tainus? Why wasn't Tainus Esther mentioned in Megillus Tainus? Now, we're going to see, I'm going to show you now various opinions, but there really is a divergency of when Tainus Esther began, because it's not mentioned in the Gemara, it's not mentioned in the Mishnah anywhere, and it's not mentioned, as I told you, in Megillus Tainus. All right, where is it first mentioned? All right, where is it first mentioned? So, according to many, it didn't come until the time of the Gaonim, or very late in the time of the Amoraim, because it isn't mentioned. It would have been mentioned in the Gemara if it had existed. So, it might be that it wasn't until a much later time period. Now, if you look at the sheet that I gave you, take a look at the one I sent out yesterday, the one that's marked 1119. So, if you look on the second side, if you look at number 8, so just the Beis Yosef. So the Beis Yosef on the Torah says, Tainus Esther. So Shema Shiny, he's talking about, by Tainus Esther, about fasting. Dechashavlan Katainus Chova. In regard to certain things, it might be considered like a Tainus Chova. Kivan Dahave Midivrei HaGaonim, since it came from the Gaonim, Umina Kol Yisrael, and it was a minhag for all Jews, so it became like a set fast day. Now, according to the Beis Yosef, he is telling you what? Rabbi Yosef Kair is telling you Tainus Esther is what? From the Gaonim. Dahave Midivrei HaGaonim. So this is one side of the scale. The Tainus Esther is actually a later innovation from the Gaonim, and it's a minhag that the Jews took upon themselves, since the Gaonim had no right to actually make a full takana per se. So it was taken. I mean, they could, but it would have to be taken on by everybody. And he says it was taken on. On the other hand, if you look in the Sefer, the Nemuke Yosef. All right, I'm going to just read you a quote from the Nemuke Yosef. It's not on there. Okay. It says, Avagav de Tainus Esther bepesachave. Even though the real Tainus Esther, Esther fasted 3 days, it was during Pesach. It was not in Adar, it was in Nisan that they fasted. So, because it was right after the decree that Haman made, it was almost a year before the actual Purim. So even though Esther fasted on Pesach time, Kedemrim b'Gemara, v'yavar Mordechai. So Amar Rab Melamed Sha'avar Yom Rishon Shal Pesach. It said Yavar Mordechai. The Gemara says it means that the first day of Pesach had passed, and Tainus and fasting. Afal Pikain Mordechai v'Anshe Knesses Hagadola Kavu HaTainus b'Yud Gimel Liadar Al Shem Hanes. So he says Mefurish, who made the Tainus Esther? He says Mordechai and Anshe Knesses Hagadola Kavu HaTainus. So here you have two extremes. You have the Beis Yosef, it's from the Gaonim. Here you have the Nemuke Yosef, that is actually from Anshe Knesses Hagadola. If it's from Anshe Knesses Hagadola, it has to be found it's not in the Gemara, but the answer is no, but it's in the Tanakh. It says that Esther told them, if you remember, we read the Pasuk last week, Esther said, when she wrote the Sefer Megillah, and she sent it out, and she says, Kasher Kimu, just like they should accept Purim, they should keep Purim, Kasher Kimu. It says the Divrei Hatzomos V'Zakos, the fasting and the crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it is mentioned, according to some, that refers to Tainus Esther, but instead of doing it in Nisan, which they should have done, and instead of making a 3-day fast, they pushed it to the right before. But who did it? Anshe Knesses Hagadola. Now, Rabeinu Tam learned this way, because Rabeinu Tam said that when the Gemara says Yud Gimel Zman Kehila L'Kol, that on the 13th the Jews got together, that's mentioned in the Tanakh, and that's mentioned in the Gemara. The Gemara says that if we're going to add extra days, ipso facto, we know to add the 13th, because Zman Kehila L'Kol. What is a pshat? Rashi says the nace happened, the battle happened. But Rabeinu Tam says, Man kilo l'kol, they were gathered together to fast. The Jews are already gathered together, and they continue to gather together. The Kfarim would come in, the small towns would come into the big cities for the fast, to hear the Kriyas Torah, and to fast with everybody. So, of course, you're going to add a day that would be the most logical day to add. So,
why did they push it, Stanley?
Why did they push what?
3 months or 4 months.
What do you mean, why? That's when Haman picked the numbers. He picked a lot.
I'm saying is we won the battle at a particular time.
Right.
Esther fasted at a particular time.
Right.
But the holiday we celebrate now is...
So the holiday we celebrate when they won the battle, when they were saved. The day of the 14th of Adar, the 13th of Adar was going to be a slaughter of all the Jewish people.
Okay, so it's Adar.
So we won the battle on the 13th of Adar. So the 14th of Adar, they made a holiday, and that's when we celebrate.
But you just said that
they fasted before because the decree that Haman gave was given a year earlier.
Okay.
And therefore, they knew about the decree, and they were worried for the whole year.
Okay.
So they fasted right away. After the decree was given, they basically fasted. And then she went to Achashverosh, and then he said, okay, you can fight. After that, and Achashverosh listened to Esther. He said, you can fight.
Wasn't there two fasting situations? One was for her going in front of the king.
Yes.
To save her life.
Right.
And the other one was
for Amalek. That's right. So that's what Rabeinu Tam. So the way that Rabeinu Tam learns is that when the Gemara says Man kilo l'kol, so it's not referring to the 3 days that Esther fasted, but it's rather referring to the fact that before they fought Amalek, the general principle was that you would fast. Not everybody agrees with that. Some say you can't fast and fight. You can't fight on an empty stomach. But some say no. They fought on it after fasting and praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, so either way you learn, according to Rabeinu Tam, whether you learn that it was because, like Rabeinu Tam says, they fasted on the 13th before they fought Amalek, or you say because of Esther, like the Mukhe Yosef says, but they still pushed it on to the day before Purim because the fast is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered the Jews from their fasting, and we want the fast and the miracle to come together because it's really two bookends. You fast and pray to Hashem, and what's the result? If you're sincere about it, you're answered, and you can have a nace happen for you. So the Chazal wanted it together. But the question is, when did it come into existence? So according to Rabeinu Tam, it already was, that's a pshat of Zman Kila L'Kol, which is mentioned in the Gemara. So we do have Tainus Esther, even though it's not called Tainus Esther, but according to Rabeinu Tam, it is mentioned in the Gemara as Zman Kihila L'Kol. And according to the others, it's Zman Kila L'Kol, but it's not because of fighting Amalek, it's because Esther fasted 3 days. So they made the Zman Kila L'Kol, they made the fast, they put it on, the Anshe Knesset Gedolah put it on the 13th as a fast day because they couldn't fast in Nisan. Because the Mishkan was dedicated, and we also because of the Cherus of Pesach. And the other thing too is they wanted it to come in on the heels of Purim. They wanted them to come together. And therefore, now, some say that's why you're allowed to fast before Purim also, even if we would hold that you can't fast before a rabbinic holiday. But if the fast is it's part of the nace that they fasted and got answered, so it's a happy fast. It's not a sad fast, it's a happy fast, not an availistic fast that you're crying and shouting, etc. You are because you're doing tshuva, hopefully, but it's a fast that ends in a happy tone, whereas the other fasts end in a very sad tone. The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So therefore, some say that would be allowed before Purim because it's really part of the nace. You have to have the fast before the day of Purim because otherwise you lose the whole concept of what the fast represents. Now, so we have these two extremes. We have the extreme that Purim might be from the Gaonim, a much later, takana, and then you have the thing that it might come from Anshe Knesset Gedolah. Halacha lemaisa, it makes a big difference Because if it's divrei Kabbalah, then we had to be machmir. All right, and so let's say a woman who is pregnant or is a person not in danger, etc., should be fasting. If it is a minhag, or if it came in the time of the Gaonim, then the minhag might have been that only certain people took upon themselves to fast. If somebody was a little sick, even a chol l'shem bo sakana, it could be that there was no obligation. So we find many kulas in regard to Tainus Esther. Another kula that's mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch, and that is that if you have Tainus Esther coming out, if Purim comes out, let's say on Sunday, and the Tainus, then you can't fast on Shabbos, and so now you could do Friday or you could do Thursday. So there's a machlokus in the Rishonim, but we paskin, we go back to Thursday and fast. So there was a case that was actually brought before Rashi, that a woman had to go see somebody in the government, and she had to travel on the Thursday, and she said, if I want, can I fast on Friday? And Rashi said, everybody else is fasting Thursday, so it's really not proper to change the date. However, what is brought, halakha l'maisa, that if a person is having a bris on that Thursday, they can go ahead, they and the people involved with the bris, that can eat on Thursday and fast on Friday. So you don't have that kula by other, by other fast days. Now, of course, other fast days, you don't have the idea of making it earlier. You always make the other fast days that they come out on Shabbos. You don't make them earlier, you make them later, because it's what Mora points out, when it's a bad thing, peronios, you have to do it later. Purim we can't do later because you can't do it after Purim. You can't celebrate Purim. It has to come before. And again, it makes sense because the concept of the fast of Purim is the fasting and then the nace. Now, what I didn't mention was the opinion of the Rambam, and the opinion of the Rambam is problematic, and I'll show you why. And there are actually two versions of the text of the Rambam. There's a version that is found in most printed texts today that's based upon the version that the Maggid Mishnah had, and then there's an amended version. And they make a big difference. Halakha l'maisa makes a big difference in what the Rambam's opinion is. Now, in order to fully understand the Rambam, you have to know if you take this is a first sheet that I gave out.
Which one? What's the
1119. What you have to know is a little bit of background, which is a Gemara and some of these opinions before we see the Rambam. Otherwise, you won't understand the Rambam. So the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah talks about sending out shluchim. Now, in the time of when they did they made Rosh Chodesh with witnesses would come to the court. The court would, cross-examine them, and then they would decide if they were correct. They would make Rosh Chodesh whatever date supposedly Rosh Chodesh would be. And then what they would do is they would send out messengers. First, they used to send smoke signals, but then the Goyim started sending out the signals to confuse the Jews so they wouldn't know when Rosh Chodesh was and wouldn't keep the holidays properly. So then what they did is they sent out actual messengers to go and, tell the people when Rosh Chodesh was. So the shluchim were sent out. Now, they only had to be sent out for Rosh Chodesh of those months where there was a holiday or some reason to be worried that if people got confused, they wouldn't keep the month properly. So the Mishnah lists that there's only 6 times that you really had to send out these shluchim. Al shisha chadashim hashluchim yotzim. There's 6 months that the shluchim go out, these messengers go out. On Nisan, because of Pesach, they'd have to go out Rosh Chodesh Nisan because people have to know Pesach is the 15th. Al Av mipnei Hatainus, on Av because of Tisha B'Av. Al Elul mipnei Rosh Hashanah, because of the Takanas HaMoedos, because Tishrei you have all the holidays also. Kislev mipnei Chanukah, Kislev they want to know when Chanukah is. Adar they want to know when Purim is. Ukashaya Beis Hamikdash Kaim Yotzim Af Al Iyar mipnei Pesach Katan. They had kept Pesach Sheni, So they'd send out on Iyar
What
also.
about Shavuos?
So Shavuos you don't have to send out. Why? You don't. Doesn't depend on the date of the month. Shavuos. It's 50 days, 49 days after Pesach, right? You count Spira, and the 50th day is Shavuos.
But,
So-
but isn't it important also to know when Rosh Chodesh is, to say Rosh Chodesh?
No, that's not so. That's not the end of the world. All right. But if you don't keep the holiday properly, yes, that's not good. All right.
Okay.
Now the thing is, the Rambam actually asks on the idea that why do we have 2 days in Chutz La'aretz of Yom Tov? Because the Shluchim could only get to the places in Israel. So outside of Israel, they couldn't get to. So the people outside of Eretz Yisrael didn't know which day for sure was Rosh Chodesh, whether it was a 29 or 30 day a month. So they'd have to keep 2 days of a holiday. So the Rambam asks, so on Shavuos, we do know, because once you find out, by then they would have known when Pesach was. So once we find out, it's 50 days later. So the Rambam says, Shelo tachlok b'moedos. The thing is, once every other holiday is 2 days, so the same thing is true by Pesach. I mean, by Shavuos, they also kept 2 days, even though they knew when Shavuos would be. Is it okay?
They don't have to dry. It'll be okay.
So you want to take another Gemara in the meantime?
No.
Okay. Anyway, so the Gemara says so the Gemara says these are the times they went out. The problem is, what about Asara B'Tevis, or what about Shivas or B'Tamas? What about those fast days? If you're sending them out in Av because of Tisha B'Av, so V'leifku nami Atamuz B'Tevis. Let them go out also on Tammuz and Tevis, so you'll know when those fast days are. Now, obviously, they don't have to go out for Tzom Gedalia because it's the day after Rosh Hashanah. Once they know when Rosh Hashanah is, they'll know when Tzom Gedalia is. The Amar Rav Chana Bar Bizna, Amar Rav Shimon Chasidoi, Maidiksiv. What does it mean when it's written in the Tanakh? Ko Amar Hashem Tzvakos, Tzom HaRavi, Tzom HaChamishi, Tzom HaShvi, V'Tzom HaSiri. These are the 4 fast days of Tisha B'Av, Shivasa B'Tamas, Asar B'Tevis, and Tzom Gedalia. So it says that those 4 fast days, Yeh Beis Yehuda L'Sason L'Simcha, they will be Sason and Simcha, days of happiness. So Kori Leitzom, first the Pasuk calls them fast days, but Kori Lo Sason B'Simcha, and then they call them holidays. Are they holidays or are they fast days?
Can they be
So that's a Gemara. So Bisman Sheyesh Shalom, when there's peace for the Jews, Yeh L'Sason L'Simcha, there'll be holidays. Ein Shalom, if there's no peace, Tzom, they're fast days. So Amar Papa Hachi Kamar. But wait, so we don't have peace now, so they should send out the people for Tevis and Tammuz. So he says, let me explain. Bisman Sheyesh Shalom, when you have a total peace, all right, then you L'Sason L'Simcha, they will become holidays. These days of Tisha B'Av, Shivasa B'Tamas, when we have peace, they're holidays. We're going to see, according to Rabeinu Tam, Rosh, when we have the Beis HaMikdash, we can celebrate these days. Yesh Shmad, if there is a Shmad, which means a decree against Jewish people, that they're under persecution, then Tzom, you have to fast. You're obligated from the Tanakh, from the Navi, to fast. However, there's a middle degree. Ein Shmad v'Ein Shalom. What if there's no peace, but there's no persecution? We don't have the Beis HaMikdash, but we're not in a state of being persecuted. Then you have a special situation. Amar Papa, Bisman sheyesh Shalom, Yeh L'Sason Simcha, Yesh Matzon, Ein Shmad v'Ein Shalom. So what's the situation then? Ratzu Misanen, Ratzu Ein Misanen. It's up to the people. When you don't have Shalom, which means you don't have the Beis HaMikdash, but you don't have persecution, then it's up to the people. Ratzu Misanen, if they want to fast, they can fast. Ratzu Ein Misanen. They don't want to fast, they don't have to fast. So therefore, in the time of Bayis Sheni, so they had the Beis HaMikdash, but they were Shalom, but there wasn't Shmad. There was no persecution per se against the Jewish people. Therefore, Ratzu Misanen, after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, there was no Shalom, but there was no persecution per se. They weren't being persecuted. So it's Ein Shalom the Ein Shmad. So what's the halacha? Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Lo Misanin. So therefore, they didn't have to go out for Teves, and they didn't have to go out for Tammuz. Why? Because the people don't have to fast. Only if they want to fast on Shivasa B'Tammuz and Asar B'Teves.
Does that apply in?
We're going to see. We'll see. So then the Gemara asks, Tisha B'Av Nami. What about Tisha B'Av then? Then they shouldn't go out for Tisha B'Av either because we don't have Shmad, and therefore it's Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Ein Misanin. Amar Papa, shiny Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is different. Hoil B'Huk B'Lu Tzaros, because there were many Tzaros. Now, Huk B'Lu means they were doubled. Doubled could mean it was, worse Tzaros. And some say Huk B'Lu from the word Kefil, double. Both Batim Mikdashim were destroyed. So it was a double of the same thing. So therefore, Tisha B'Av, you always have to fast on Tisha B'Av, but the other fast days are Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Lo Misanin. Therefore, they didn't send out the Shluchim. And this is talking, Bisman Beis HaMikdash was not Kayim. And that's why the Mishnah ended and said, Kishahaya Beis HaMikdash Kayim, when the Beis HaMikdash was existing, then they go out for Pesach Sheni also. But, in other words, according to this shot, and then the Gemara lists the things that happened on Tisha B'Av. Now, Rashi, this is how Rashi explains it. So in other words, Shalom means, if you look at Rashi, which is the next thing, Yesh Shalom, what does it mean, Shalom? She'ein yad hagoyim tekif al Yisrael. The goyim are not, in other words, their hand is not on the Jews. The Jews have Israel. They have the Beis HaMikdash. They have some freedom. Yelu sason l'simcha. Now Rashi says, this doesn't mean during Bayis Sheni they had a holiday on Tisha B'Av, because the Beis HaMikdash still was not like it was at the beginning. Most of the Jews had not returned to Israel, and let's face it, they were fighting all the time with somebody, with the Romans, with the Greeks, with somebody. So Rashi says Simcha here really means L'Isur Behesped V'Tainus. They didn't fast or have Hespedim. It was still a holiday, Tisha B'Av, to the extent that you didn't fast. But it wasn't a holiday that you made a Suda or anything, because we still were not in that type of a situation. What does it mean, Yesh Gezeres HaMalchus Som? If there's Shmad, Rashi says Shmad is Gezeres HaMalchus. There's a decree against the Jewish people. Chova Lihisanos Behen. Then you have an obligation to fast. Ratzu Ein Misanin Kibin Roshusi Lo Matrachin and Shluchim Alayu. They didn't send the Shluchim because, what do you call it? They didn't have to fast. So that's the way that Rashi learns. Rabeinu Hananel says the same thing. You could look at the Rabeinu Hananel, except that he says explicitly it has to do with the Beis HaMikdash being existing. He's saying, Bisman she'eshalom klomer kolzman she'Beis HaMikdash kaim ye'elu sason l'simcha. Yesh gezerah tzom. Ein gezerah ve'ein shalom kagon ata bisman hazeh. Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Ein Misanin, like in our day. We want, they don't want, they don't have to fast. V'kivan shim Ratzu shelo lishanos behen, there's no chovah, and therefore they don't have to go out. Now, that's the way. So according to the way Rashi and Rabeinu Hananel learn, we have a situation like this. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, when it existed, so it was shalom. It was shalom and no shmad, and therefore they were sasor and simcha. It doesn't mean a holiday.
Purim.
What?
It's all before Purim.
Huh?
All before Purim by his Rishon.
Yes. No, Bayis Sheni also, according to Rashi. So when the Beis HaMikdash, Rashi is talking about Bayis Sheni. When the Beis HaMikdash existed, they were sasor and simcha. Before Purim, before the destruction of the first Bayis, there was no Tisha B'Av. So we're talking about Bayis Sheni. So during Bayis Sheni, according to Rashi, they didn't fast on Tisha B'Av. They didn't fast Shivasar B'Tammuz. Why? Because they had the Beis HaMikdash. So it was an inyan of Yesh Shalom v'Ein Shmad. After the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, it was Ein Shalom, but there still wasn't Shmad. So therefore, it was Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Lo Misanin. If they didn't want to fast, they didn't have to, except Tisha B'Av. They always had a fast because all these terrible things happened. So Tisha B'Av became an accepted fast day. You always have to fast. But the other fast days not. Now, the Ramban says that since they're all found in the Navi, they should all be the same. And just like Tisha B'Av, we start at night. We should start at night with the other fasts also. And I think what the Ramban answers is that since the other fasts are Ratzu Misanin and Ratzu Ein Misanin, it depended upon what they wanted. They didn't want to fast at night. They only accepted upon themselves to fast on the other fast days during the day. Mashen King Tisha B'Av stayed like it was in the Tanakh, because a normal fast day starts at night and ends. It's a 24-hour fast. So that's the way that Rashi and the Rabeinu Hanana learn. The Rambam, look at the Parasha Mishnah.
Wait, doesn't a normal fast start at sunrise and end at sunrise?
Ours do, except for Tisha B'Av.
Right.
But theoretically, if they're all in the Tanakh, Tisha B'Av, Shivasar B'Tamas, they're all put in one thing. Tzomah Ravi, Tzomah Siri, they're all mentioned in the same pasuk. They should all be the same, the Ramban says.
Okay.
So he answers the reason why the other ones start in the day is as the other ones depended upon the people's choice. And if they chose not to fast at all, they didn't have to. So if they chose to fast from the morning, that's all we have to do. Now, that's the way that Rashi, the Rabeinu Hanano, that's the normal way. And the Mishnah seems to imply it because it says, Bisman she'isha b'mikdash kayim, they went out for Pesach Sheni and Iyar, which implies that the rest of the Mishnah was talking when the Beis Hamikdash did not exist. But the Rambam doesn't learn that way. The Rambam will have to learn it means by his Rishon when they went out for Iyar. But the Rambam, look in the Parasha Mishnah. So he says, Mesiras ha'edus, Barias ha'chodesh, when the witnesses would come in, Ein ola b'Yerushalayim, they came to only Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim sholchen based in shluchim l'kol ha'aretz, k'moshe yispoer. U'b'bayas sheni, during bayas sheni, lo yumis anen, lo asiri b'teves, lo shiva asar b'tamus, ela harotza yisana, o shalo yisana. So the Rambam implies that they did fast Tisha B'Av, but they didn't fast Shiva Asar B'Tamas, Asar B'Teves, because it was Ratzu Misanin, he says, Harotza Yisana, one who wants to fast fasted, and the one who didn't. Ulefichach lo yu yotzem al teves v'al tamus. The Rambam is talking about during Bayis Sheni. Why? Because Bayis Sheni, that still wasn't a complete Beis Hamikdash. And don't forget, they were always fighting. They had the Greeks, they had the Romans, so it really was Ein Shalom. But it was Ein Shalom, but there still wasn't Shmad. Why? Because the Jews had the Beis Hamikdash. They had their own land, so it wasn't considered Shmad. So it was Ein Shalom ve'Ein Shmad. It was Ratzu Misanin and Ratzu Lo Misanin, Ein Misanin. Amar Hashem, Komar Hashem, Tzom HaRavi, Tzom HaChamishi, Tzom HaShvi, Tzom HaSiri, V'chule. Kilu nasan as a bechira biyadam be'elu hayamim imratzu misanim behem oshlo yisanu. They have the choice. The people have the choice to fast or not fast. But Tzoma Ravi Yeshivas or Batamas because it's in the 4th month, etc. And then at the end he just says, but Tisha B'Av they fasted. They had a fast. Now, so the way the Rambam learns is that this concept of Ratzu Misanin and Ratzu Lo Misanin, that's during Bayis Sheni. But after, why? Because during Bayis Sheni, it was Ein Shalom v'Ein Shmad. Because you didn't have Shalom, because the Jews were constantly fighting with their, with the enemies that were surrounding Israel all the time. But there was no Shmad. It wasn't considered Shmad because Shmad only happened at certain periods, but there wasn't a full, 400 years of Shmad. So it was dependent upon their Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Einu Misanin. However, the Rambam would hold that after the Beis Hamikdash would be destroyed, then the Galus would be considered like a Shmad. And therefore, today, if it's Ein Shalom v'Yesh Shmad, what's the halacha? Then we're mechuyev to fast all of these days. And as a matter of fact, they really theoretically should all be the same. They're not. That's a question according to the Rambam. But nowadays, we should be mechuyev to fast on all of those days. According to Rashi, even nowadays, we have the kula of Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Einu Misanin, except the Jewish people have accepted upon themselves, so we all fast. But theoretically, there's a kula, except for Tisha B'Av, there's a kula on the other fast days. Whereas according to the Rambam, they should all be the same. Now, what works out, look at the Rambam in the Yad Chazaka, number 5. So he says, Yesh Sham Yomim, Shekol Yisrael Misanim. By the way, Kapach and others, they make a big deal over the word Sham. The Rambam uses the term Yesh Sham many times. He said it really doesn't make sense. You should just say Yesh Yomim, there are days. Remi Yesh Sham, they are there. Matter of fact, at the beginning of Hilchos Yesodei, Torah says you should know Yesh Sham, that there is there a God, you know. So what does Sham mean? So the Kapach, the Kes Mishnah has one shot. I don't understand. I don't know Dick took that well about how the term is used. But Kapach says that in Arabic that word is some sort of it appears as a essential. There's essentially, or there is definitely. So Yesh Sham Yomim, there are definite days that you have to fast. In other words, it doesn't depend upon making a neder or anything. These are days one must fast. Shekol Yisol Misanim B'Pnei Hatzorah Shiur B'Hem, because of the tragedies that happened. K'dei L'Orer Halavavos, in order to, stir our hearts. Uliptoach Darkei HaTshuva, that we should do tshuva, and they should be a zikaron, a remembrance of the bad things that happened, that our forefathers did, that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. K'maseinu ata, it's just like our actions now. If we were good, we'd have the Beis Hamikdash, and we don't. So there's a purpose. Basically, I think what the Rambam is telling us is, if it's because of what happened 1,000 years ago, what do we need to fast for? All right, it's done and it's gone. We don't have it, and what can you do? What the Rambam is saying is, the cause of the destruction still exists today, and therefore the purpose of the fast is that we should better ourselves, so that we should be on a better position than we were when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So there is essentially a connection today, in other words, that we should fast. There's relevance today to fasting on these days. That's what the Rambam is saying, because that our actions are what caused the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Hopefully it should make us think to do good, and we should be misvada, etc. In other words, that we should do good. And then he gives the fast days. Shlishi b'Tishrei, the 3rd of Tishrei, Asira b'Teva, Shivasa b'Tammuz, and Tisha B'Av. Then he says, now, from the beginning of the Rambam, what does it appear? It fits in with what he said in the Parish Mishnah. Because he just says, Yesham Yomim Shekol Yisrael Misanin. He doesn't say it depends upon whether they want to or they don't. Like some ask, why did the Rambam eliminate? The Gemara says that Bisman Hazer, Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Einu Misanin. The Rambam doesn't mention it. The answer is because the Rambam held that Gemara was talking about bias Sheni. But Bisman Hazer, it's Ein Shalom and Yesh Shmad. There's no Shalom, and it's considered Shmad. It's considered persecution. The Jews somewhere, Jewish people are always being persecuted. That's how it exists today. And therefore, in other words, matter of fact, Rabbi Yoshe points out that when a person comes to be Megayer, you tell them, what do you want to join the Jews? We're a persecuted people. All right? So, in other words, Bisman Hazeh, the Jews are basically totally under persecution. Therefore, we have a chova. When it's Ein Shalom V'Yesh Shmad, you're mechuyev from the Tanakh to fast. We're mechuyev from Divrei Kabbalah. And that's why the Rambam doesn't distinguish, like the Gemara says, of Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Ein Misanin. Then the Rambam says a very strange thing. Then he says, I'm sorry, the next one fits in with what he said before. These fast days, these 4 fast days, are mefurish in the Kabbalah. Some are Revi, some Chamishi, some Shvi, etc., etc. And then he mentions what they are. This is in this month, that month, etc. So from these Rambams, it appears what? You're mechuyev midivrei Kabbalah, from the Tanakh to fast, because we're in a very bad situation now. We're in a situation of shmad and no shalom, and therefore we're mechuyev from the divrei neviim that we must fast. Why? Because these fast days have relevance now also, because if we had been good, we wouldn't be persecuted, and we'd have the Beis Hamikdash again. So now the Rambam in Halacha Hey, and this is the strange Rambam, V'nogu kol Yisrael bismanim elu lehisanos. And the Jewish people are noheg, have a minhag to fast on these days. Ubashlosh Asar ba'Adar, as well as on the 13th of Adar, which is a Zecher L'Tainus, for the Tainus Shisana B'mei Haman. They fasted in the time of Haman. Now, Rabbi Yoshe points out if it had to do with the day they fasted before they fought, Haman was dead. So Yisanu B'mei Haman implies what? The 3-day fast that Esther did, similar to what we pointed out in the Nemuke Yosef, but they just pushed it instead of the 3 days. They pushed it to the day before Purim. Shnemar Divrei Hatzamos V'Zak Hasam. And then he says if it comes out on Shabbos, you push it to Friday. Now, what is the Rambam saying? There's a contradiction. First of all, the Rambam says, "V'nogu kol Yisrael b'zmanim elu lisanos." So this Rambam is very difficult because we just said, the Rambam said it depends upon minhag. Is not true. It doesn't depend upon minhag because once there's no shalom and there's shmad, you're mechuyah midivrei Kabbalah. He just said in the paragraph before, these are from the Kabbalah. He didn't say it's a minhag. Now all of a sudden he says, "V'nogu kol Yisrael b'zmanim elu lihisnanos ub'shalosh asar ba'adar." So he seems to say that that Shlosh Asar Ba'adar is equal to the other fast days and that they're all a minhag. Now, that's how the Maggid Mishnah learns the Rambam. Look at the Maggid Mishnah. V'nogu kol Yisrael, Tola Rabeinu, the Rambam makes it, in Yanam b'minhag, he makes the whole thing dependent upon the minhag, custom. Lefish and Ispar b'Gemara Shabbos, Manshei Shalom, Dahainu Kashiyabana Beis HaMikdash, Hein l'sasan l'simcha. When the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt, there'll be holidays. Ein shalom v'ein gezerah yadua. But if there's no specific gezerah yadua, there's no specific shmad, I'll call Yisrael, on all Jewish people everywhere, ratzu misanan, ratzu ein misanan. They have the choice. It's a minhag. If you decide in your makabel that minhag, you fast.
Now, who said that one?
That's what the Maggid Mishnah is saying.
Okay.
Chutz mitainis Tisha B'Av, with the exception of Tisha B'Av, since v'nichbelu bo hatzaros. V'achshav nagu hakol, but now we fast on all the fast days because people accepted it. Kamosha kasav Rabeinu hari hein chov al kol Yisrael ad sheyibana Beis HaMikdash. So what the Maggid Mishnah is saying is that the Rambam, but he's totally overlooking what the Rambam said in the Parashat Mishnah. What he's saying is that the Rambam basically learns, like Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel, that when the Beis HaMikdash is there and there's no gezerah, you don't have to fast. But when the Beis HaMikdash doesn't exist, and then there's no gezerah, then it depends upon minhag. But what he adds is that once the people decide to fast, and they're makabel, then what happens? You must fast. The implication is that Ratzu Misanan, Ratzu Ein Misanan, doesn't depend upon each generation or each group of Jews, but it rather depends upon what? Once the Jewish people as a whole have accepted upon themselves, then they have to continue to fast, and we can't change it, even though it's dependent upon minhag. That's what the Rambam says. V'nogu kol Yisrael bizmanim elu. Nowadays, people have taken upon themselves to fast, and therefore it's a chova. Now, the Rambam is, this way of learning is problematic because, first of all, number one, the Rambam implied before that it was a chova. He just said there's days that every Jew must fast. He didn't say dependent upon minhag. Second of all, the Rambam should have then brought in the Gemara that it was Ratzu Misanan, Ratzu Eino Misanan, and then say, but nowadays we've been makabel, we have to do it. He just says nowadays you have to do it. Doesn't make sense. What is it following up on? He should have said there is a choice, but nowadays we have to do it. He doesn't say that. Second of all, the Rambam, look at the Lashon. And the Mishkanis Yaakov points this out. He said, the Lashon, anybody that knows anything about language realizes that this Rambam, there's a problem. First of all, it should have said, V'nagu kol Yisrael. It shouldn't say Bizmanim elu. If he's talking about the 4 fast days, he should have said what? B'yamim elu. On these days, the Jews have decided to fast on these days, not on these times. It should have said B'yamim elu, not Bizmanim elu. And also, it should have said V'nagu Yisrael lehisanos b'yamim ha'elu. Not v'nagu kol Yisrael b'zmanim elu lehisanos. It sounds like Yoda. In other words, they decided to fast on this day, he should say. Not that they decided on this day that they should fast. Or on this day, it should be they fast on these days. He should have made it as a statement and not put the verb at the end before the verb should come before the subject. So, therefore, he makes a change in the Rambam. Now, before I give you the change, I have to tell you that the amended Rambam is not such a chidush because, A, the Beis Yosef brings it. This is the text of the Beis Yosef that I'm going to read you momentarily. And as I started looking through various Meforshim on the Rambam, so lately there was a reprinting of, here, give me that second, safer there. So they found a Ksav Yad from, don't worry about it, we'll pick that up later. They found a Ksav Yad, all right, there's a sefer called Yesod Mishnah Torah, Rabeinu Yehuda Rabbi Moshe Al-Butini. So the Rabbi Yehuda Al-Butini lived before the Beis Yosef, all right, he lived in the early 1500s. It was a Rav in Yerushalayim. He had in his possession the very ksavim of the Rambam, all the manuscripts of the Rambam, and he changed the manuscript and pointed out that this is a mistake, that what the Maggid Mishnah has is a mistake. The main problem with this Rambam is that it totally contradicts what he said in the Parasha Mishnah. We saw the Parasha Mishnah, he said it was only during Bayis Sheni that they had Ratzu Masanim, Ratzu Einu Masanim. But afterwards, you have no choice. But he's saying it depends today on Minhag, Ratzu Masanim. That doesn't fit in with what the Rambam said in the Parasha Mishnah. Now, I was thinking what the Maggid Mishnah could learn is that what the Rambam held was during Bayis Sheni, it was Ein Shalom and it was Ein Gezerah, so it was Ratzu Masanin, Ratzu Ein Masanin, and that continues even now. It's still, there's no Shalom, it's true, but there's also no per se Gezerah. However, most learn that whatever was during the time of Ratzu Masanin, Ratzu Ein Masanin, that we ratchet down a step now. It was Yesh Shalom v'Ein Shmad, then now it's Ein Shalom v'Ein Shmad. And if it was Ein Shalom v'Ein Shmad, then now it's Ein Shalom v'Yesh Shmad. In other words, whatever was then, it's worse now. We're worse after Churban. So if that's true, then this Rambam doesn't make sense, because in the Parasha Mishnah he said they were Ratzu Masanin, Ratzu Einu Masanin during Bayis Sheni. So today it wouldn't depend upon whether we want to fast or not. We have to fast, and that's what the Rambam implies. So what's the change they make? So this is a change. One letter, that's all. Just change one letter. And the Rambam should be read like this. V'nagu kol Yisrael bizmanim ha'elu lehisanos. Take out the vav. Instead of ubishlosh aser ba'adar, it should read like this. V'nagu kol Yisrael bizmanim elu lisanos b'shlosha aser ba'adar. Zecher, etc. It's one statement. The Rambam isn't talking bismanim elu on the other fast days that he mentioned in the previous halakha. That's done with. So there's two separate concepts here. A, the 4 fast days, you're mechuyev because it's Ein Shalom v'Yesh Shmad. You must fast midivrei Kabbalah. Those are those 4 fast days. However, nagu kol Yisrael bismanim elu. In our day and age, which means it didn't exist in the Divrei Kabbalah. The other ones the Rambam says are Midivrei Kabbalah. But in our day and age, which is past the time of the Kabbalah, which might even be in the time of the Gaonim, now Nagu, in other words, in our day and age, Nagu, now there's a minhag to fast on the 13th of Adar. Besides those 4 fast days, now we've also taken on a 5th fast day, the 13th of Adar. So what the Rambam is basically doing here is what? Learning like what the Beis Yosef said, that it was in the time of the Gaonim. The whole purpose of this Rambam is to tell us it didn't exist in the time of the Gemara. It's Bizmanim. That's why he didn't say Biyomim Elu. He's not talking about the previous fast days mentioned. He's talking about our day and age. Bizmanim, this day, this time period, this time frame, which is after the time of the Gaonim, All right. Now the Jews have a minhag to fast on Yud Gimel, and therefore, basically, what the Rambam and the Beis Yosef are learning is that Tainus Esther is basically a minhag, and it came into being in our day and age, meaning after the close of the Gemara, and therefore it's a kula. We can be mekel by Tainus Esther. However, the other fast days are a chova according to the Rambam. They're more machmir. So you have basically, in other words, you basically have this machlokas, the Rambam versus Rabeinu Tam regarding Tainus Esther. According to Rabeinu Tam, Tainus Esther could be different Kabbalah the same way all the other fast days are. And actually, that's how the Maggid Mishnah learns the Rambam, that it would be really basically like Rabeinu Tam, that they're all midivrei Kabbalah, except they're all Ratzu Misana and Ratzu Einu Misana, but the people accept it, so you have to fast now. So the halacha is true, but it's totally different. The difference would be whether you could be mekel or not. If it's dependent upon minhag, you can be mekel. If a person is sick, even ein bo sakana, he could eat, because it's only Ratzu Misana and Ratzu Einu Misana. Let me explain one thing. So what is the machlokas between Rashi and the Rambam? So according to Rashi, our situation today is there's ein shalom, but there's no gezerah. All right, now during the time, God forbid, of Hitler, according to Rashi, you would have had a fast meat divrei Kabbalah, because it was yesh gezerah. Now, the problem is yesh gezerah mean each community is looked at separately? The Spartan didn't have a gezerah on them, or does it mean that when there's a gezerah on one group of Jews, every Jew must fast, because we're all, Kol Yisrael, Rebin Zebazeh, they're all considered, to be responsible for their fellow Jew? I don't know. The Ramban wants to say that we have to fast because there's Jews everywhere that are under, that have gezerah. But according to Rashi, it appears that when there's no shmad, in other words, it's Ratzu Misan and Ratzu Einu Misan. And why? Because according to Rashi, it appears that the main reason for the fast, in other words, there are two things by Tisha B'Av. The Tzorah of Tisha B'Av exists nowadays. We don't have the Beis HaMikdash. So a lot of our Tzorahs is we don't have Eretz Yisrael, and we don't have the Beis HaMikdash. So that's relevant today. But the other things are basically, they're not, the Churban didn't happen on Shiv Asar B'Tamas. The Churban didn't happen on Tzom Gedalia. Those were events that led up to the Churban. So our fasting on those days are not the anniversary of this terrible thing. They are basically remembrances of past events. So Rashi might hold that the remembrance of a past event is not enough to make everybody have to fast. However, when there's shmad, then the remembrance of a past event is coupled with the tzorah, and I think Yashaber says this. When it's coupled with the tzorah, then you have a chiyuv to fast. Tisha B'Av is considered to be the day of tzorah, because that's what it means, Hukbulu Atzoros. Every bad thing that happened to the Jews is commemorated on Tisha B'Av. Even the Nazi camps, everything should be commemorated on Tisha B'Av. That's the day, because Tisha B'Av has another thing that the other fast days don't have. It has a velus. You can't wear shoes, you have to sit on the floor. We don't have that with the other fast days. So Tisha B'Av is a fast not only because of a past event, but there is a definite, it is the day that commemorates all the tzoros of Klal Yisrael, and therefore, even if it's Ein Shmad, it's considered all the bad things that happened to Jews have to be commemorated on Tisha B'Av. But the other fast days are only a Zecher B'Yama. They're only a remembrance because the Beis HaMikdash wasn't destroyed. They're not days that commemorate anything other than ideas that led to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore, if they want, fast. If they don't want, don't fast. Yeah.
You mentioned two things. You said the Beis HaMikdash and the land. We have the land. We don't have the Beis HaMikdash.
No, but we don't have. It's land means that Jews are in 100% control. We're not in 100% control now. We're still not 100% control. We don't have Malchus. Rambam talks about Malchus returning. That there's a king and there's a whole system. Now. The Jews always had land in Eretz Yisrael. We didn't have like we have now, but it was. Now what does the Rambam hold? So the Rambam could agree that it all, but what the Rambam holds is that the Jews are always under persecution. So therefore, even Shivasar Batamas and all these other ones, that since we're always considered under persecution, we have to fast on these days. Because what did the Rambam say the purpose of the fast is? To do tshuva. So if you're under persecution, that means you have an obligation to do tshuva. There's a tzora on you. So whether you're cognizant of it or not, there's a chiyuv for us to do tshuva. These days were days of doing tshuva. However, where there is shalom, where you have the Beis Hamikdash, then it's not the same thing. Then we can't say, well, our actions destroyed. No, once the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, then we have to do tshuva on that, on that thing. So that would be, in other words, the final point. The final point would be, it depends on the text you have in the Rambam. According to the Maggid Mishnah, the Rambam and Rashi agree that basically all fast days today, with the exception of Tisha B'Av, are minhag, ratzu misanin, ratzu ein misanin. According to the Rambam, no. All fast days, with the exception of Ta'anit Esther, are basically chova. They are an obligation to fast. And the bottom line is that Ta'anit Esther is basically a minhag. The difference would be whether we could be mekel and how far you could be mekel. For example, the Ramban says that those things that were not a chova, but were dependent upon ratzu misanin, ratzu ein misanin, that's why we fast in the day rather than also going to at night as well. So there are differences in halacha depending upon how you classify these Tainesim. What does the Shulchan Aruch say? Look at 9 and 10. Maybe we'll end with the Shulchan Aruch. We'll do the next sheet next week. Hakol chayavam lisanos arbet somos halalu v'asur lifrot sketer. Everybody's obligated to fast on these days. Again, he paskins like the Rambam. He doesn't say ratzu misanin, ratzu ein misanin. Look what the Mishnah Berurah says. Asur lifrot sketer. You can't, in other words, lifrot sketer means to break down the fence, which means you can't say, I'm not going to fast. I don't care. You know, Ratzalomer, Avalgav, the Maskina Begamora, the Zmandein Matsui Gezeros, even though it says in the Gemara that when there is no Gezerah, there's no, Shmad, so of Goyim on Jews, Tali Hadavar Baratz and Yisrael, depends upon what the Jews want. Tahainu im Ratzu Rov Yisrael, the Skibu Shol Hanos by Gimel Samos, Arishus Biyadim. So the Jews, if now he says, what is Ratzu Misanin? It doesn't mean one group. It means Rov Yisrael. Mishnah Berurah says it's dependent upon the majority of the Jews. And once a majority of the Jews decide to fast, then you know what? We're in for a fast day. Kosra poskim de achshav kvar ratzu v'kiblu aleihim klal Yisrael midor dor v'asur lifrot sketer. And that's why the Shulchan Aruch says asur lifrot sketer, because originally it could have been dependent. Let's take the Rambam's opinion, which might be the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, that during Bayis Sheni, it was dependent upon Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Ein Misanin. But what happened after Bayis Sheni? So we said, according to the Rambam, it's considered Gezerah, and Gezerah, you're Mechuyah. But we could say, no, it's not Gezerah. We don't have a Gezerah on us. So therefore, it should be dependent upon Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Ein Misanin also. But even according to that, we could say, once the people went into Galus and took upon themselves to fast, then you know what? Even if it's dependent or was originally dependent on Ratzu Misanin, Ratzu Ein Misanin, once it became a decision collectively by the Jewish people, then you're in for a fast, and Asur Lifrot Sketer, you cannot, get out of it. Now, if somebody made a mistake and ate on a fast day, they have to finish the fast. They can't say, well, I ate. That's called chayiv lahashlim. You have to finish up your fast day. Everybody else is fasting. You have a chiyuv to fast. You do not have to make it up on another day, the Mishnah Berurah says. The only time you have to make it up on another day is if you made a netter to fast, but you didn't make the netter on a specific day. And therefore, if you broke the fast, you still have to make that netter to have to do it. Now, the interesting thing is that by Ta'anit Esther, the Shulchan Aruch says a lashon that tzarich lefro, I think you have to pay it back. The implication is you have to make it up. So I said the Shulchan Aruch might mean one of two things. He might mean that since we're not sure when Ta'anit Esther, in other words, he's talking about where it's a nidcha. So if you fasted, let's say you have two possible days. It could have been Friday, it could have been Thursday. Maybe only there the Shulchan Aruch is saying if you ate on Thursday, well, you could make it up on Friday because Fridays also could be Tainus Esther because it's a fast before before Purim. The other thing he might mean is because Tainus Esther is a minhag, therefore it became like a netter to fast, and therefore a netter you have to make up. So it's not like a specific day Tainus Esther. It's just a halacha that we fast as a zecher for, and the Jews took it upon themselves because really it should have been in Nisan. So we're going to do it. So it doesn't depend on one specific day. And the other final point is that there were Jews, it's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, and it's actually Masechta Sofrim, there were Jewish people that fasted 3 days for Tainus Esther. But what they did was they did Bahab. They did a Monday, Thursday, and a Monday. And basically, and some say they even did it after Purim, as long as they didn't do it in Nisan. So what it comes out then, according to these Shitas, is that Tainus Esther really doesn't have a specific date. How did they do 3 days? And in other words, it wasn't a kavua fast. It was just a fast that Jewish people fasted for. Now it's become the
Wouldn't it be appropriate for poskim to say that because of the extermination of European Jewry, there should be a fast day?
That's Tisha B'Av. So that's what the
That
poskim
includes
say.
that?
Tisha
Tisha
B'Av
B'Av
is
includes-
to
Discussed
commemorate.
this after World
Right.
War II quite a
The
bit.
Tisha B'Av, and
Tisha
that's
B'Av
why
includes
there
that.
are all of the piyutim. If you look at the piyutim on Tisha B'Av, they're not all for the Beis Hamikdash. There are piyutim for the what Kalmeni or whatever.
Worms.
For all these other things. So, all right, Sydney, did your Gemara dry up?
It'll dry.
Sorry, Sid.
Take a hair dryer.
Hair dryer.
No, I'm not kidding.
I'll
It'll
just leave it open.
what?
I'll just leave it open.
All right.
Good.
All right. Anyway, so that's the thing with Tainus Esther, and that's why you'll find in the Shulchan Aruch these both extremes, whether we should be machmir or makel. And the answer is most people, when it comes to fast days, take the tzad kula, because the majority of the Rishonim do seem to say it's not mentioned in the Gemara. Rabeinu Tam is a stretch to say that Tainus Esther is midivrei Kabbalah, that it's actually what is referred to. Because as we said, Esther, the 13th fasting before the war is not mefurish in the Tanakh. It's only that he said, well, Moshe Rabbeinu, they fasted. So it's not mefurish in the only thing mefurish in the Tanakh are the 3 days that she fasted, and those were in Nisan. So we don't see any source for what we do on Tainus Esther, for our version of Tainus Esther, and therefore we can be very makel, and that's why most of the poskim are very makel with Tainus Esther. Thank you for watching this shiur. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, just select subscribe at the bottom of the video screen, and then hit the bell in order to receive notifications when new shiurim are uploaded. If anyone would like to sponsor one of the shiurim in memory of someone, or for a rufu shalema for somebody, or for a schuz for someone, please send me a message or email me at stancran@sbcglobal.net. Thank you.